Welcome to In the Know with the Stafford SO, a podcast presented by the Stafford County Sheriff's Office in Virginia that brings you the stories of the men and women who work tirelessly to keep our community safe each day. With In the Know with the Stafford SO, you'll find out what life is really like behind the law enforcement badge. Thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.
Welcome to In the Know with the Stafford SO. I am Kathy Volbrecht, your host for today. Thanks for tuning in. Today's guest is Deputy Tracy Scoggins, who is our D.A.R.E officer, and he was recently named the Virginia D.A.R.E Officer of the Year. Deputy Scoggins, congratulations on your award.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We are going to talk about that award later on in the podcast, but let's just talk a little bit about D.A.R.E, the program itself. I know it's been around for a very long time. There are many people, especially our fifth graders and their teachers, who know about the program, but let's give our viewers a little bit more information on what exactly D.A.R.E is about.
Absolutely. D.A.R.E actually got started back in 1983. It actually started out in Los Angeles, California.
Okay.
There was a chief of police. His name was Daryl Gates at the time, and also the Los Angeles school system. Together they partnered and they created the D.A.R.E program. And here it is today. It has changed over the years. It's improved, and also it has kept up with the times as well. But it stands for Drug Abuse Resistance Education, and it is a drug abuse prevention program, and it's science and evidence based, and D.A.R.E officers are certified law enforcement officers, and we also go through 80 hours of training through D.A.R.E and D.A.R.E America to become certified D.A.R.E officers in the schools, and it is taught in our school systems throughout the United States and on military bases in other countries as well. With the program, we show the kids and teach the kids different skills and decision-making model skills to help them choose to lead healthy lifestyles and safe lifestyles as well.
Nate, you talked about it being a scientific and evidence-based program. Can you go into a little more detail about that?
Well, they do have universities and other researchers that go through and help produce the program and the curriculum for D.A.R.E America.
Okay.
And then it's evidence-based. What I mean by that is they go through and they actually test it with the school systems and the children to see how it's working in the schools.
Okay. Now, why is it focused on fifth graders, not any other grades?
Actually, D.A.R.E America has lessons for kindergarten all through 12th grade.
Okay.
They do have different curriculums for the different age groups, but here in Stafford County, we choose to go with the elementary program. It's called Keeping It Real,
Okay.
and it's actually designed for 5th and 6th graders, but because our elementary schools end with 5th grade, we teach it to our 5th graders here in Stafford.
Now, how did you become involved in D.A.R.E?
Actually, I worked for the Hanover County Sheriff's Office as a deputy there. I also worked for the Stafford County Victim Witness Program. I worked in the Juvenile and Domestic Relations Court. I worked with children that were victims or witnesses to crimes, and also worked with victims of domestic violence.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have a background working as a substitute teacher in our Stafford County schools, in the elementary schools. And so when the position came available, I thought it combined it all of my experience and
Absolutely.
kind of jumped on it.
Okay. Now, from all of your experience, how has D.A.R.E changed over the years? You mentioned that it has changed a lot here in Stafford. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, actually, the curriculum, the elementary curriculum, changed while I was here. I actually started here back in 2008, and so I've been here for 13 years. And back in 2012, 2013, they actually changed the elementary curriculum. They improved it. They added videos to it, which the kids really enjoy to go along with the PowerPoints. And instead of lecturing a lot and lecturing on the effects of drugs, we now partner up the kids. They pair, it's called Think, Pair, Share. They think about solutions to problems. They pair up with a partner and talk about it, and then we share as an entire group as well. We also have this children work in small groups together and then come back as a larger group with the class to compare their answers and to discuss ways to solve problems. They also get to do a lot of acting in class, so they have a lot of fun. It's engaging and it's active learning at its best.
Now, I know this year you're back in person doing the D.A.R.E program with the kids, but you weren't able to do that last year, but you didn't let the pandemic stop you. Can you talk about what you did with the program last year?
Yes, that's correct. Last year we actually did it virtually, just as the school systems and the teachers were teaching through Google Meets. We did the exact same for all 17 of our elementary schools.
Wow.
Normally we go into each classroom and teach for about 40 to 50 minutes on a normal year, but last year we just broke up the fifth graders. We split them up. And we taught them on their asynchronous day when they were at home and not during their instructional time with their teacher. So we still were able to go through the entire D.A.R.E workbook and curriculum with them, which was awesome.
I was going to ask, what are some of the lessons you learned having to switch from, taking this program, which is so important to do it in person with these kids, to all virtual? What were some of the things that you learned about that?
To be flexible, to think positive, and to be very creative when coming up with ideas on how to engage kids when you can't physically be there or partner them up with others. Also learn to be very tech savvy,
Right.
which is something that I never thought I'd catch on to.
Now, you've brought with you the D.A.R.E workbook that you teach to your kids in the classes. Can you talk about what's in that?
Absolutely. This is the workbook that we use. It has information. The very first lesson is information about what the D.A.R.E program is about, and we teach them also about the D.A.R.E decision-making model. That's a tool that we actually use almost every single lesson in D.A.R.E, and the acronym D.A.R.E actually stands for Define, Assess, Respond, and Evaluate. So we explain that to them and how they're going to use it throughout their workbook. We also talk to them about, in our second lesson, about alcohol and tobacco, the effects and the health effects of each of those substances. We talk to them about risk and consequences, because every time you take a risk, there's always going to be a consequence.
Right.
And we don't want the kids to make impulsive decisions. We want them to really think about those consequences before they take the risk, kind of predict what's going to happen. And if they think something's going to be negative, they're going to get hurt, they're going to hurt someone else, they're going to get in trouble, then maybe they need to reevaluate their choices and pick something different. We also talk to them about peer pressure. There's a whole lesson on peer pressure and what peer pressure is, what it sounds like, what it feels like. And we talk about the different resistance strategies or ways that they can say no to their fellow friends and classmates, and maybe even a best friend as well. And that's actually when the kids get to role play and they get to act out with their fellow classmates, which is always really cool for them to actually get in there and actually practice using those resistance strategies.
And knowing, too, that they can do it in a safe environment. Because
Absolutely.
I think, a lot of times when kids are around each other, they may have these feelings and maybe they want to speak up, but they don't know how. And so they hold back or they keep it inside, and that's not helpful, as we know. And you mentioned earlier that you also teach them a little bit about bullying.
Absolutely. The very last lessons are about bullying, and we also teach them about communication as well, and stress, which has been really important during the pandemic, because a lot of the kids have been feeling stressed, just not being able to be with their peers.
Sure.
And also doing online lessons.
Right.
It's been hard, and it's been different for the kids. It's been a challenge, and not just the children, but also their families as well, and they see that stress in their families.
Sure. Now, how often are you in the schools again? Can you address that schedule that you have with the fifth graders?
Yes, I teach in each of the fifth grade classrooms for about 40 to 50 minutes, depending on the school and their schedule and what they can accommodate for us. Sometimes we have to also teach in one classroom, and this year we're also doing the Google Meet with sometimes the classroom beside if there's not enough time to go into each classroom, so they share their time.
Okay.
In the past, a lot of times, if there wasn't enough time, we would actually put the classrooms together. And in some of the schools, we've elected to do it that way. Some of the schools were able to get even all 6 of the classes in and teach for about 40 to 50 minutes, which is awesome to be able to get in each classroom.
And are you there once a week or several days a week?
Once a week.
Okay.
Right now, I teach in 4 of the elementary schools. I also have a partner, Deputy Herod, who teaches in 4 of the other elementary schools. And come springtime, we'll teach in the rest of the 9 elementary schools.
Okay. Now, in years past, except for last year, there's a big D.A.R.E celebration at the end of the school year, and it's a lot of fun. The sheriff's office gets involved. Again, because of the pandemic, we couldn't do that last year, but are you planning to do it this year?
We are waiting.
Okay.
We're waiting to see. So that's something, hopefully in the next month or 2, we'll be able to make that decision.
Yeah.
But yes, we weren't able to do it actually for the past 2 years. Because in 2020, when the pandemic really hit and the schools had to go some in-person to online, we actually had to stop D.A.R.E abruptly that year. So the spring kids that year, they were about 3/4 of the way through their lessons, and then we stopped altogether, which is really sad. We weren't able to do our D.A.R.E basketball fundraiser where the teachers play basketball against the deputies from the sheriff's office here.
Right.
And we weren't able to do D.A.R.E Day as well that year. And then last year, even though we were able to teach them virtually, we couldn't do those big events, and the kids really do look forward to it. So it was disappointing to them and to us, but we were still fortunate enough to be able to have D.A.R.E, which is always something to cheer about.
At least they'll have those lessons virtually, to learn about these new things, and this year in person. And we are keeping our fingers crossed that you'll be able to have that big celebration at the end of the school year, because like you said, everybody looks forward to it. So.
Yes.
And we're named the Virginia D.A.R.E Officer of the Year. So what was that all about? Can you give us some background on that?
I was nominated. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea who nominated me. Okay. But it's my understanding that there was several nominations throughout Virginia, and I was chosen by the Virginia D.A.R.E Association. So I'm very humbled and I'm very honored, and just want to thank thank not just the sheriff's office and my fellow deputies, but I also want to thank our community and thank the kids especially.
Well, I think your experience speaks for itself, and we are honored to have you teaching this very important program to our kids. You're making such a great impression on these young kids who really look for role models like yourself. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you.
What kind of a future do you see for D.A.R.E here in the community? Do you think it's going to continue along the lines that we've been teaching our kids, or do you think it's going to expand? What do you see coming down the pike?
I think it's going to stay probably pretty much the same in the classrooms, the curriculum. However, D.A.R.E America does usually have supplemental lessons that come out every couple of years to keep up with current topics and things like that. They just went ahead and released a new supplemental lesson on vaping for the elementary students. They had released one for the middle school students, and we were able to adapt that, and before the pandemic, start teaching that a little bit to our 5th graders. But now that they actually came up with one for the elementary students, that'll be awesome to be able to have next year with our students.
Sure, and just to teach them to at least be aware of what, those issues surrounding that.
Absolutely. We talked to them about tobacco, but to actually have an entire lesson on vaping and to let them know the health effects and just let them know what can happen is really important.
Right, absolutely. Well, Deputy Scoggins, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up?
I would. Our students, I always tell them each and every lesson to please go home and talk to their parents and to their family members, their brothers and sisters, about what they learned in their lessons that day. But I also challenge our parents to talk to their students and to ask their children on the day that they have D.A.R.E, what did you learn? What did Deputy Scoggins, what did Deputy Herod teach you today in class? And just keep those lines of communication open. I want the kids to be able to feel that they can go to their parents through middle school and high school and honestly the rest of their lives with those important questions.
Exactly, and that's so important to keep those lines of communication open and taking the lessons that you and your partners are teaching the kids beyond the classroom. And, it's always been a partnership in educating our kids between the school system, the sheriff's office, and our parents. So that's such an important point. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for joining me on the podcast today, Deputy Scoggins. It was very interesting to talk to you. And again, thank you so much for what you do for our community.
Absolutely.
And that wraps up this episode of In the Know with the Stafford SO. Thank you for joining me, and have a safe and wonderful day.
Thank you for listening to In the Know with the Stafford SO. This podcast is produced by members of the Sheriff's Office and is one more way we connect with our community. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Visit our website at staffordsheriff.com for details about our social media channels as well as events where you can meet our staff. Thank you for your support.